Hello, Year 5. So today we're going to think about the processes involved in creating a piece of cloth like this, which is what would have come out of Salts Mill, something like this. It's made out of wool and alpaca fibres and it's been woven. So we're going to think about the process involved in that, and then we're going to have a go at doing some weaving and try and link it perhaps to the topic that you're doing now, which is the topic of water. So this that I've got here, this is wool top, it's called. This is just basically the wool as it's come from the sheep. So as it would have been in Salts Mills when it first arrived, they would have got the wool top from the sheep and they would have got wool from the alpaca, and then it's mixed together. But when the wool top comes in, the first thing that happens to it is it goes and it gets washed. So I've got my piece of paper here to go through the processes. So washing is the first thing that happens, and that's why it was really good that Titus Salt built his mill right next to where the weir wall is, because there was loads of water, so it was easy to do the washing. And then the next thing that happens is the carding. So that's when you take the wool top like this and you get a comb, but they have a special brush, and you comb the fibres so the fibres are all facing in the same direction. That's quite important. And the fibres at this stage are pull apart incredibly easily. So they wouldn't make a very good piece of cloth, would it, if you could pull the fibres easily like that. And that's what the fibres are like when they first come in. And then the next process is dyeing. So that's when the wool top is placed into a dye bath and dyed. Now you have to be really careful when you're dyeing wool, because it can very easily start to felt, and you can always see that dyed wool is a lot less easy to pull apart than undyed wool, because the fibres have already started to meld together because of the heat needed in the dyeing process. But you can still separate the fibres out and you can still pull them apart fairly easily like that. And the next process after the dyeing is the spinning. Now what happens with that is that one of the fibres is taken and twisted. So to spin, you twist the fibre around and then you pull, and you keep pulling and twisting. And as you're pulling and twisting, you're making the fibres join together and you're making it much stronger. So if I take this twisted fibre and try to pull it apart, it's much harder to pull apart than it is to pull it untwisted. So that's what happens in the spinning process. And so this yarn here, or this fibre, would turn into yarn a bit like this. So you have this, and then you go from this, and your next process is the weaving. And then through weaving, you end up with a piece of cloth like this. So it's going to be a bit difficult for you to do weaving at home because you don't have a weaving loom or anything. But what we can do is paper weaving, which will help you to understand the process of weaving. So you need, if you've got some thin card, that's great. If you don't, you can use copy paper. You can, or if you've got coloured paper, that would be better. You could use, but you can use normal copy paper that you might have, used a pencil and coloured or painted over, or just plain white would be fine. Fold it in half, match your edges. And then the first thing that you need is you need to use a ruler or a straight edge. Got lots of stuff here, sorry. And can't find a pencil. There's a pen. And at the top, so not where the fold is, that's the folded edge. So not where the fold is, near the top, use your ruler or your straight edge, which could be the side of a book or something, and draw a line. Doesn't have to be an exact measurement, but it needs to be about that distance from the top. So once you've got to this stage, then you're going to start to cut the pieces. So take your scissors and think about approximately where the middle of your card is, and starting from the fold end, cut until you come to the line that you've drawn, and once you get there, stop. Doesn't matter if your line's not perfectly straight, it's fine. And then think about, in this space here, you need to find about the middle of there and cut until you reach your stop line, and then go to this side about the middle and cut to the stop line, and then in between each section, about the middle of each section, stop, 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 stop. And then you open it out and you have created your warp threads. So warp is spelt like this. And I always think it's easiest to remember that the warp threads are the threads that go up and down, because if you swap the A and the R around, it's like wrap. So the warp threads wrap around the weaving and go up and down. And then you need to take your weft threads, which are the threads that go in and out. And I always like to think, well, the weft threads go from left to right and right to left, so it's easy to remember weft. So what I've done is I've just cut up some bits of paper that I had. I've got some coloured paper. If you haven't got coloured paper, what you can use is paper from a magazine. You can cut into strips, anything that you've got, newspaper, it doesn't matter. But if you've got coloured paper, obviously that's the easiest thing. And when you're weaving, it doesn't matter which side you start from, but you always start by going over and under. Okay, so we've gone over that one, under there, over that one, under here, over that one, under here, over that one, under here. And then push up your card up to the top, to where your stop line was. And then either carry on with the same colour, because actually weaving looks really nice when you only use two colours, or take another colour. And this time you need to do the opposite of what you did on that line. So on here, we went over on the first one. So this time we need to go under. So we go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, and push it up. And it doesn't matter if it's a little bit long, you can always cut them off at the end. Keep remembering to push it up, and then I'm going to do like a red and blue alternate. And this time, because I started here under, this time I need to go over. So this row 1 matches row 3, and row 2 matches your row 4 all the way through. So this time it's over, then under, over, under, over, under, over, under, push up, and you carry on like this. So when you come right down to the bottom one, that can be a little bit tricky. That can be the trickiest one to do, to try and get it in, but it's really worth it because it just finishes it off really well. You just have to persevere, threading it through. Sometimes turn it over, thread it through from the back. If your last strip is a bit too thick to fit in properly, you can always trim it down. So I finished. And as you can see, it works well on both sides, the weaving. So what you need to do to finish it off is just to even up the strips. I'm going back to what was my front. So pulling them across, even them up. Get a glue stick and stick down these edges to just hold it in place, and trim off these bits, and then that finishes off the weaving. So I've been thinking about how we can connect what we've done here to your new topic of water. So we can make a warp loom look a bit watery. So take a piece of card or paper that's a colour that would link to water, and if you don't have one, then maybe colour one in first or paint it. Take your ruler or straight edge and draw your stop line. And then when you're doing your cutting this time, instead of cutting straight lines, cut wavy lines. Still stop at the stop line. You can make your warp lines closer together if you want to. So, you know, thinner lines, you've got more to weave. Thicker ones, you've got less to weave. So I'm making mine sort of parallel, but you don't need to do that. You can experiment and see what works well with different shapes. So wavy lines like water. And then you need to find papers to create your weft that would make you think of water. So I've got some blue paper that I've already cut into strips that we used before. But I've also looked around the house and I've found some magazine papers that are sort of the colours of water. You could cut this into strips to use. And try that, just into strips like that. Or, yeah, I noticed there's something that's a bit blue there. It might be interesting to add, you know, a few words in and things to see what it looks like. So just experiment with what you've got in the house to create your, I quite like this. I'm going to cut another piece of that. To create your weft. So to thread, we're going to start, and again, exactly the same thing. So over, then under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Say it to yourself as you're doing it, helps you to remember. Over, under, and push it up. And then your next row, you do the opposite. So I'm going to use the magazine paper here. So this time I'm going to go under first, and then over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and push it up. And carry on doing the same thing that you did before. I'm not going to carry on because you know what to do. So just experiment, find different things that you can use to create a weaving that's inspired by water. You could even try cutting your papers in a wavy line to see what happens. What effect will that have when you weave them through? And the good thing is if you cut a piece of paper straight and then you cut into it in wavy lines, you end up with two wavy pieces with a straight bottom and a curvy top. So see what would happen if you did that. You would end up with some gaps in between where you couldn't push it right up to the top, but that might be interesting to see. So basically what you need to do is you get a piece of copy paper or coloured paper to start with. Do a straightforward weaving. You fold the paper in half, you cut strips and to the stop line, and then you weave. And remember, your weaving pattern should look like this. You should create a design where you create a pattern like this. If your pattern doesn't look like this, that means you've gone a little bit wrong somewhere and you need to look at it. So I hope you have lots of fun creating your own weavings. So whatever colours you want to in this one, and then have a go at creating one that makes you think about water.